let's get this meeting started. Shall we do roll call?
Mayor Blackburn.
Here.
Trustee Weber. Trustee Smith.
Here.
Trustee Peterson.
Here.
Trustee Stelter.
Here.
Trustee Valentine.
Here.
Trustee Morrow.
This morning we can continue. All right.
Yeah.
First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
We'll move.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. Are we approving the agenda?
For the, just the
Budget.
for the budget session.
Thank you.
Okay. Aye.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, that motion passed. All right, let's go. Where'd Cindy go?
There we go. I'm sorry.
Well, while we wait for Cindy, I do want to apologize for the staggered additions. I know that that is a continued frustration with the board. Did our very best. We've had some computer issues. I'm assuming that's probably what triggered some of our computer updates that we've been getting the last couple of days. And want you to be aware that as far as the budget that was provided to you in the packet and the budget that was sent out today, the changes were a correction in approved numbers, but they don't actually have any effect on the 2023 numbers that you're looking at. So I'll give that while Cindy comes back. All right.
All right, it's to you, Cindy.
Actually, I was gonna leave this for question and answer time. You know, the budget's been presented. And I'm just here to answer questions. If you have any.
Well, let's start with the transmittal letter. If there's any questions on the transmittal letter itself.
Yeah. As I said last year, it's not impossible to predict. It's either challenging to predict or difficult to predict, but it's not impossible to predict. It was impossible to predict the budget. So I want to move to from impossible to challenging or difficult.
What page is that on?
It's in the very beginning.
Very beginning.
Transmission.
Okay.
It says it's impossible to predict. I said that last year.
No assumptions? No. Reference. Up your head. Okay. It's page 5 of the packet. Maybe so noted. I was thinking it was at the end, but again, do you remember, Cindy?
No, I can't find it. That's what I'm looking
I'm
for.
looking for myself.
You'll search.
I wrote myself.
It's on page 13 of the packet under moving forward.
Yep, moving forward.
Other questions on the transmittal letter?
I changed it to challenging.
Thank you. Thank you, Cindy.
Okay, other questions? Yeah, page.
I don't really have a specific question, but I do want us to continue talking about rates. And, I feel like we have not covered that adequately. We certainly haven't voted on it. And I think there's a good explanation of rates in here, and I can't tell you the page. It's on page 11.
No, there's some of it is on page 10.
Yeah.
That's the history.
And here is probably what I'd like to see reconciled. So, and then we will get to it when we get to the budget tables, but I'd really like us to look at the water revenue expenditures table because of the shortfall that we have. And I would really like Cindy to explain that shortfall and are we in trouble for 2022? And then the other thing I would like to see, you probably can't do it at the moment, but the best estimate of what we get, what additional revenue we get with the increases in the water rate usage and the increases in, well, let me back up 1 second. I think we need to know exactly what our differences we have to make in the water budget for 2023. So I'd like to see more of a layout of what increases we will get with water rate, base rate increases and the staggered water usage. So we can see how much we actually are going to get from that in some kind of a spreadsheet. And then it gives us the ability to play with numbers a little bit because I'm not necessarily wedded to the increases that we have on the base rates. And I think with that needs more discussion, but I don't think it can be a very cogent discussion without seeing the amount of money coming from your proposed base rate increases and the water rate increases, and knowing how much money do we need to make up in the water.
So are you on page 3?
I, at this point, am on page 11.
That's just the,
Okay, I was going to the end.
Right, and I was just starting there because that is the narrative associated with the increases.
well, let's do this. Why don't we take any other questions that are just on the transmittal letter? And then we can go to water.
Okay.
Directly to water. So are there any other questions on transmittal letter?
I just have a statement that the inflation rate this year was 8.93% in Colorado. And I assume that the inflation rate will continue at a rate somewhat similar next year. So we didn't really build that into the budget, but it's there, just so everybody's on board. Probably have shortfalls.
Anything else? Report? Oh, that's
Just on the transmittal letter?
yeah, that's all we're doing right now. All right, and why don't we go ahead and go to the water? That's all right. Okay. Page 31. So. So what is our shortfall this year, Cindy, 2022?
About 112,000. Which we're making up. It was discussed to make that up with rate increase plus
Right. And is that,
other.
is that 112,000 anywhere on this spreadsheet?
Yes, that's right. If you can see. Pointer. The two green spots right there. The two green spots that are on your proposer, one is base rate and one is water rate usage.
Oh, I thought those were just increases. Those are,
Those are that's the revenue we need to get at least that much in revenue to break even.
our shortfall.
In
In 2023.
So then please explain, so I'm looking at the expenditures table on the next page. So of course, we had a balanced budget at the beginning of 2022 and water expenditures were gonna be $2,558,533. But it looks as though our expenditures are far less than what the budgeted expenditures were going to be. Looking, and I'm in expenditures now.
I see that.
And looking at the actual plus 13 December is 1,230,244. So,
So the line at the tank has not been carried over.
okay,
And the grant funds haven't been carried over because of At this point, we don't have an avenue to go down that road. So I don't have any. I didn't have concrete information to budget, so I didn't budget the lining or the grants that are gonna take to do the lining or the matching funds that have to go into that.
Okay, I'm actually talking about the 2022 column. I'm not even looking at 2023 yet. I just want to make sure that we're okay in 2022 in terms of water expenditures and water revenue.
At the moment, that's what the actual, and then where it says plus December,
Mhm.
it shows that it's gonna
They're gonna match.
break even.
Okay, so we do not have a shortfall in 2022. And mostly, the number is so much less than what was budgeted is because of grant funds that were included in revenue than would have been spent if we had spent any grant funds.
The difference from the 250 or 2.5 and 1.2 is that, most of that's gonna be that lining of the tank, the 1.2 million, almost 1.3 million.
That's been, we are not spending it in 2022, so
Oh, it's
therefore
not.
it's not in revenue. It's kind of taken out of revenue and it's not in expenditures. So that is making us balanced in 2022. Okay, thank you. And then now could we jump to the 2023? Oh, hang on, Thomas.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, mine is a new
Okay. Thomas.
endeavor.
On that same item. So the difference between the 2,558, 2,005,500, or $2,558,000. And I assume the capital outlay projects, Fund 60, type 50, account 70 is the relining in 2022. Okay, so the difference between those, the difference is 12,000 or 1,280,000.
So we also had a shortfall in revenue. We have a shortfall in revenue, so the base rate is coming in at 814,000, but the usage is only picked up, we're only at 216,000, where we anticipated being at almost 700,000.
Okay, well, the difference I'm talking about is water fund expenditures, 2022 budgeted, 2.5 million. Minus actual expenditures, 1.278. Gives 1.28 million versus 1.23 actual. So that puts us $50,000 over our budgeted expenditures. Without that one project, so there's another $50,000. We have an excess. As I see it.
It's-
Yeah. So our expenditures, actual, plus 13, 1.23 million. Our budgeted actual, less than 1.278 million, is 1.28 million, a difference of $50,000. Over budget,
Right.
or under budget, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what we were trying to figure out. It's like,
Yeah, $50,000 under budget for 2022. And just question. So, yeah, most of it's in the capital outlay project, 2 million gallon tank relining, 60, 50, 70. There's another $50,000 that we're under.
Meaning we're missing 50,000 or we're in the black?
Black, yeah.
Okay, so our shortfall would be 112 minus 50, which would be what? 42,000? So we actually are 42,000 short,
I don't know where you're going. Well, I don't see that.
or
we're projected to spend within what we will have available in the water fund in 2022. With the projects that are expected and expenses in 2023, we have $112,000 shortfall in.
okay, sorry. I misunderstood that.
So could we apply that $50,000 from 2022 to 2023?
The $50,000 would already be included in what is anticipated to be expended this year and what we will have available next year. And anything that's an overage automatically goes into that, I don't want to call it the reserve, but it goes into the reserve, and then that is used in the next year. It's already.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's already in.
Yeah. We won't know if that is, that 50,000 is going to be available until we get through the year-end process. There's gonna be a lot of, there's entries that go in at year-end.
Okay, do we have a line item to account for that 50,000? Or at least I can find that?
No, it is not budgeted. It goes, that would go into the reserves.
Right, so it's not budgeted for 2023.
The 50,000 is not budgeted,
There's no accounting for that 50,000 yet.
not yet.
Okay. Can we add it?
No, because we don't know that it's gonna be there.
We don't know if any of this is gonna be there. This is all just a guess. But we can reasonably expect, based on your model, to have $50,000 in excess in the water fund at the end of the year. So I'm I'm like,
No, because you're going off of budgeted and actual.
Yeah.
According to actual, budget isn't real money.
but we had the money. If we budgeted for it, we had the money.
No, we didn't end up getting the money.
Yes.
We're short on revenue, so we didn't get what we expected. We are gonna spend what we are getting. We don't have, we're not anticipating we're gonna be under budget, but we didn't get as much revenue as expected, and we're spending all of what we got. That leaves you at zero. So there's nothing to carry forward as a reserve number. There could be, after I do year-end entries, there could be additions to reserves.
Okay.
But at this point, I'm not predicting any excess
Okay.
to add to reserves.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying. What you're saying is the actual plus 13 on page 31. I'm working on the most recent version of the packet this afternoon, 12:10. Page 31, actual plus 13 totals 1,230,000. You're telling me that I should compare that number to the one on the following page, page 32, expenditures, also 1,230,000.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I guess that still leaves Paige's question as to what happened, where did it come from? The difference between the budgeted and the actual, where did it come from?
Where did what come?
Yeah,
Where did that 50,000 come from? If we had the remainder of the projects, basically, we got capital outlay expected for the 2 million gallon tank, 1.2 million versus our actual expenditures. There's still another $50,000 that we didn't have in expenditures. It won't carry over into next year, as I understand it, but it's still there. All right.
Just a rudimentary question. So Thomas, are you adding?
No,
One
What I'm going to say
point
is,
two.
I'm going to be taking our expenditures. Your question, as I understand it, was, we had expenditures, our actual is much less, but we budgeted 2.5 million, our actual is 1.2. Okay. Where's that difference coming from? The answer was from Cindy. Relining. Right, which I read is 1.278 million.
Mhm.
The difference between 1.278 million and 2.558 leaves another $50,000.
Oh, that's your math. Sorry, I was not catching the math.
the thing is, that is not real money, that was projected money. That was not in the bank. That was, we said we would get that money via what, X, Y, and Z. And so we projected that we would get that money. We didn't get that money. It's not there. We can't spend something we didn't get, and it's not there.
But why not, is the question. Why isn't it there? Not just that, because the expenditures,
We didn't
the
get it.
expenditures changed, the income didn't, or the income changed, but the expenditures also don't match up.
We didn't spend it. And so
Yeah.
to make
What-
it better, to make it balanced,
What didn't we spend it on?
We didn't spend it on payroll, we didn't spend it on the Norris retirement. And if you go down each line item and match up, but we did spend extra on contract services. So it's,
Right. each line item shows that it's the less, more in shop expenses, but more in travel, but less in insurance and bonds, less in utility costs.
In the end, we're predicting to spend all the revenue we got, but the revenue we got is significantly less, especially on usage than we predict.
So what's saving us is that we're not letting the tank.
Yeah, we
To
wouldn't have
to
the
make the
matching
numbers
funds
work.
to do that.
And I have something I'd like to, this is end of year, is if you could recreate tables that you did in 2021, which I know are a little rough, January or February, but it shows every budget line item, what was either what was overspent, underspent, and then previously you had shown an excess for each fund category. We didn't do that in 2022, but it was done for 2020 and 2021. And do you know what and I'll show you the tables I mean, but those were very helpful to understand what was the outcome of our 2022 season of spending and revenue. And I think that would help because we don't have your difference yet on here, like you do with that kind of a table. So we actually can see where we were over budget, under budget by line item.
Sorry to hijack your question.
No, thank you.
So what was your next question?
The next was, with these rate increases, what is projected, so at this point, you're projecting for 2023, that for water, we are potentially $112,000 short.
Yeah.
So we need to do something to come up with $112,000. So how many users do we have for water? I should have this number in my head.
It's on that.
Is it
sheet right there.
here? Okay, because just,
Units are right here. And that's 2022 units, so it's this and this. This is standby and this is active caps.
so just the $2.50 we're gonna charge everybody? I was thinking like 800 users and it's obviously more. I don't have my calculator, but that alone is
That includes the outside. users.
right.
Exactly.
Everybody, our total users are, I don't know. I can't add that fast, but 15, let's just say that it's 1,800 users. Does that sound about right?
Accounts,
Yes,
that's,
budget units.
yes, that's about accurate.
And what did I just say?
You said users.
Oh,
We have
budget
about
account.
3,000 users.
Oh, we do. What number did I just say? About 1,800. So if you have 1,800 and you're adding 250 to every bill, I don't have a calculator with me and I'm not smart enough to calculate.
That's because it's over here. It's,
Oh,
so there's,
monthly.
that's how much monthly
So,
that would be.
okay, so it's $45,000 from just doing that one. So that doesn't leave a whole lot more to do excess to balance, but this is, when you say 112,000, sorry to be bogarting this, but are you also taking in the capital projects that we have proposed? I can't remember what anything we're proposing to spend out of the budget for 2023 in the water system? There's 100.
We have the, we have the grant projects, which, and then we have, we have the PRVs in there. We have the meter measuring, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
But those projects are grant paid for.
and they're paid
But
for.
the grant money's in here,
Mhm.
and then it's, so the expenses are offset by the grant revenue,
Yeah,
and then, so the balance of that is gonna be fixed cost expenses.
Okay, so
Does that answer?
it does, I think so. We don't have a big wish list in the water fund that we haven't already paid for. PRVs and all that and are being paid for out of the 342,000. We're not gonna do the 2 million until 2024.
The rest of it,
Yeah, that is already included here. So I guess I'm saying, and I'm glad that it's 112,000 and not more.
Right.
But it's not that much we need to make up.
but
67.
we don't have a lot to make up, but we also have to keep in mind that we need to grow the reserve
Right.
in order to have enough matching funds. Now, if we can find a grant that's 100%, then we're okay. If we have 25% match, we might be okay.
And the other thing we need to consider is that when we go for the SRF loan, they're gonna look at all of this. And they're gonna say,
We have enough for 25% and
Right now.
right now, but most of them are 50%.
oh, yeah,
So if we don't start growing that reserve, we're not gonna have the matching funds to.
No, I get that, but why I'm bringing this up is I think we need to be really clear about why we're raising rates. That this is being done so we can make up for the identified $112,000 shortfall. And I'm thinking put in the 45,000 from everybody paying $250 that they haven't been paying on their bill. And then, which left 67, I think you said.
67,000.
And then identify how much we need to be responsible in addition to the 67,000 and how we need to come up with it.
but the other thing is, if you look at that water rate chart that's back in the transmittal letter. Each of the tiers have small increases, some are 10 cents, some are 20 cents, so that's where
And
the,
that part I have not calculated out yet.
Yeah.
And
oh, so that's not included in that. 58?
that is not included.
Ah,
It's not included on here. And I don't have the data to be able to do that overnight. I mean, I am working towards that, or we are working towards that, but we're
Yeah.
collecting the data so that I can build that model.
Rick got his hand up.
oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading.
The other thing is about the rate increases on the tiers. That's a very soft number. We can't take that as gospel. When the rates go up, usage goes down. So trying to raise the amount of money we need to cover the predicted shortfall is going to be very difficult if we do it by usage. Then we will have a shortfall next year. It's almost guaranteed.
Thanks for bringing that up, Rick. I agree, and I also noticed that the increase for the first tier is 250, 0 to 1,000. So correct me if I'm wrong, but if the bottom of that is 0, somebody uses 0 gallons, that's still a base rate change. Anything that's added to that tier is essentially a base rate change. If it's 0 to 1,000 gallons and the first 1,000 gallons costs $250, you're gonna have that for every bill. There's no way to escape that.
Yep.
So let's leave that at 0 so we can have an honest accounting of what our base rate is. So how about I move any addition to the 0 to 1,000 gallon tier instead be placed in the base rate.
Good.
Are we doing motions?
I just want to make sure I understand what you're trying to get at. So you're saying that it's really misrepresenting the base rate by having it there because you could have 0 or 20. Right. Second thing I wanted to ask, so I'm clear on that. Excuse me. Second thing I wanted to ask is the last budget hearing, we weren't clear about what the rationale was or why we ended up having such a loss. Why did we not make up the revenues we thought we would? What was the rationale for that? Did we discover why we had such a loss?
All right,
Because we had
let's-
predicted.
Thomas made a motion. Let's get a second on that motion before we go anywhere else.
I'll second this motion.
All right, now we can continue with discussion. So, yes,
So, yes, to answer your question, I think it just conflates the two, a base rate versus a usage rate. To claim that any use, even nothing, zero, is also going to be billed is a base rate. So I move that we always leave the first tier of our pricing at zero. I guess is essentially what I'm saying.
Okay, so, all right, so do you have a question about, did we figure out where?
Yeah, the second question was, we had a pretty extensive analysis. How we should be charging for what. And one of the things I heard from that was 75% base rate, 25% usage. And I don't think we went after that last year. We kind of chickened out and said, no, we don't want to raise it. We'll raise the usage %. So essentially, doing the same thing this year. We're saying we're going to increase the usage instead of the base rate. Kind of gambling, we're throwing the dice. That's what we're told. When we rely a lot on usage, we're in more trouble. And I'm guessing, I don't know what the reason was, but I'm guessing the reason we had such a shortfall is people consume.
Yes,
I'm gonna say that it was somewhere between conserving, and I think that they were looking at the water companies as a user and not realizing that each of their users pay on the tier. And I think they were taking the water company as a whole that's using 1 million gallons and thinking that they're gonna pay for 1 million gallons on a tier, but they don't. Each user bills on a tier. I think that's what happened, but I know I'm still, like I said, I'm still collecting the data.
That's what I was going to explain that I'm sure most understand how the water company is billed for. So if you have 10 users, you get 10 users and your first tier is 1,000, you get 10,000 gallons at that first tier rate before you go to the second tier. You get the second tier rate times 10,000 gallons if it's 1,000 increment. They're not billed dollar for dollar, tier for tier, like one account user would be.
yes,
So meaning that those users, the cumulative use of every user in every of the 28 water companies, whatever it is, are prorated?
Yes.
So how in the world? So
Yeah.
the metering is hugely important here.
But the town only reads the master meter. And so that's how we bill off of, based on what their usage is. And each one gets, now how the water company then bills their customer based on their individual reading, we don't have any of that.
We bill, so they use 100,000 gallons, but they have 10 customers, then it gets billed 10 per
10,
tier,
A
right?
tenth of 100,000.
Before up to that amount, instead of them being billed on the tier up to 1 million, is what I think happened, but I don't know that for a fact yet.
so here's my concern. How many people use 0 gallons? Or use below 1,000 gallons a month?
I'm gonna suggest that we change that to $1, from $1 to 1,000 instead of 0. There isn't any, they don't get billed if there's no usage, right?
Base rate.
Right,
I did base rate.
right. They get paid per penny, other than the base rate.
Yeah, because if you don't charge them for any usage, then this increase is not going to be valid and we're going to lose money. And if we're continuing to say that the $43,000 comes from this 250 on 0 to $1,000, we have just lost $43,000 revenue, which means we got to find it somewhere, somehow. And so we're back to square zero. Yes, Thomas.
Are you speaking to my?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what you're saying is what?
That if, all right, the way this is calculated is that 0 to 1,000 is 250. So if we take that and make it 0, that calculates out with all our users at $43,000. So if we take that and make it zero again, we have just lost $43,000 in revenue, which takes it back down to, we're down to what? We're still $80-some thousand short.
So what I'm asking, what my content of my motion is to take that $43,000 instead of putting in the first tier of our base rate, put it in, or first tier of our usage rate, put it into the base rate.
So make our new base rate $5.50.
Yes, whatever the different, whatever you said, the base rate's going up 3 and
Yeah.
the first tier is going up 250. Essentially, anybody that uses any water at all is gonna be paying that first 250.
Okay, all right. Now
Am I wrong?
no, it's just I misunderstood what you were trying to say. Yeah.
I was the same here. I did as well. So I appreciate that clarification.
What is it? I mean, because okay, so you said, like, we bill in thousands, right?
Mhm.
Is there a portion of 1,000? Did we bill by?
Yes,
Yes,
it is.
yeah.
That rate table.
Yes, if we bill $2 for 2,000 and you only use 500, you're gonna get billed $1. Right.
Okay, gotcha. All right, rescind my motion then, because then it's scared, yeah.
Yes.
So I feel like, again, the public is pretty concerned that we're raising rates again. And I feel as though the only way to make this clear is to show our shortfall and then have Cindy or Dave Weber with his model explain what revenue we will get with base rate changes. And then the total revenue we get, no, I'm sorry, first. Because Dave and Thomas were pretty clear in their AWC presentation, maybe it was a state, they did not want to see base rates have to increase. But I think we're gonna have to do a compromise of base rates. So my point is, I think we need a very clear idea of what we are getting from the potential increases in water usage, which I know they get a little squirrely as you go higher. But how much do we get from that? Just like this 45,000, it was really helpful to have a number to talk about. And then what is the projected income from the base rate increases, which is very tangible, and show people that. And so they understand that the shortage can only be reasonably dealt with through rate increases. We can't use tax money and we can only get grants for capital projects. We can't get grants to pay water bills. So I just think, and I'm turning to the public because you all have been paying attention. And I'd like to know if that would be useful, because we would then have a matrix to choose from, right, to get the money we need. And everybody could see the decision-making we're doing. What happens if we only do a $2 base rate and still keep the first 1,000 at zero? What's our expected income in that tier? You know, in that line in the table. And if that's possible, I think that's the only way to be transparent here for people to understand what we are proposing and why.
Want to open it up for questions from the public at this point?
One of the things that we're kind of glossing over is what Dave Knudsen said, that the recommended water base rate should be about 75% of what we take income. And we're nowhere near that. We're about 50%. And one of the things is when we go for a grant, they're going to look at that. And that's a knock on our system. And that could make it so that we don't get grants.
And that's exactly what I want a table for. I want it to be very clear that if we do the 75% that the grantors want, this is what it's going to cost and this is how much money we get. But right now we have a chart and it's all very esoteric. And I think people want to have some specific numbers to look at, and I sure do.
I'm happy to do that.
Yeah. If that helps.
I have some spreadsheets that I worked up in previous years for previous rate increases that essentially just graph the tier changes. It'd be pretty straightforward, I think, to say how many users we have in what tier. And then come up with totals based on that, but it's not really a grid. It's something that you. Yeah, probably not quite what you're looking for. I was trying to be helpful. Maybe a suggestion.
Yeah, it just seems like we need to show differences in amounts with the rate increases on base rates. this is what we get from it. And because people are concerned about low income folks, which we can get some LEAP help for them. But again, we, everybody knows we've been doing rate increases for at least the last 5 years. So I think it needs to be very clear what our choices are. And that's just water.
Right? Yes, Chris.
The problem I see is it's gotta be more broad. We've gotta have a projection of where all the money's going, not just why we're doing the water rates. Because we've had such bad usage over the years of where the money has went. Nobody trusts. The trust is gone. And for anybody to be agreeable to these raises, we have to know where this money's going. If it's going into wages for more people, it has to be on this graph. Because otherwise the public's not gonna like it. Because, we've seen, I stand up for Corey, because Corey has been awesome. And he's doing an awesome job. But the problem is you've got to know the public's trust. And so everything has to be black and white so that it can be seen. We're putting this into, do we really need a new truck this year? Or can this truck go for another year and not cost us $40,000? You see what I'm saying? Plus, yeah. Does that make sense?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Also, if we want to have there's been no plan. Honestly, there's been no 5-year plan, 10-year plan. The public would really like to see that, and it would be comprehensively. Then they could understand what was happening, where we were headed, how much we were spending, what are we doing? And thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Sure.
Yeah, I want to echo what Chris said. I feel like there was a water rate last year. Okay, so where did that money go? Water rate the year before that. How was that money spent? There's never been any year-over-year accounting of we increased the water rates and here's what we got for that. That's never presented to the public. The other thing I don't ever hear from the board is how can we save money? What I hear is how can we increase revenue? And that, from the public perspective, is just really frustrating because you're asking everyone in the community to be more frugal and to contribute to the costs that you have, and yes, you have costs, but we never hear you being frugal and saying, how can we save money? What can we change about what we're doing to serve our community better?
Thank you. Yeah.
I'd like to follow up on that. So just so it's clear, water fund can only be paid from revenue and grants have to be matched. So the only place to save money is staff salaries, which at this point, we need another staff. Well, it's not water, but I feel like we are at our bare bones staff and supplies. There's no trucks being bought. Because you can't buy a truck, you have to use the water fund to buy a truck if it's dedicated to the water fund. So we're not buying any trucks. I know, but there's no big capital. So what I would ask you both, all three of you to do is look at the budget here for water. And because I was asking questions about line items too. And at this point in time, I don't see any place to cut down, unfortunately. But I would love it if you would look and ask more questions, because maybe there's something that you could provide. But I look at it and I see all the bills. I just don't know what we could cut back on. So.
Yes, Mr. Martin.
I know of 2 items. One is the Browns Hill software at the 1 million gallon tank. Since it's been offline, we've been paying for our software subscription to that plant. This was brought up by Jeremiah and Dave Weber in an email. And that's something like $20,000 a year that we've been paying that we haven't been using. So they recommended that. And the other one was, I think in the packet, we moved from 55-gallon drums to 275-gallon totes for chemical, which is saving some money. That's all I've heard.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we need to make a decision on the Browns Hill if we're going to run the 1 million gallon plant. And that's a board decision, but the board has not made. Yes, Ms. Ferguson.
There's more to Browns Hill than just software. That's software and hardware. All the computer and all components that are in that plant are provided from Browns Hill. And the reason that it's that amount year over year for a contract is because part of that contract was that every 5 years, they come in and they replace and update all of that in the plant for us. We're not budgeting and saving to have to replace all of the computers and other computer monitor equipment that is used to operate that plant. Should the board decide that they want to operate the plant, you're shutting down the plant, the issue. But if we terminate Browns Hill contract, then we need to budget to replace the equipment.
And you can't run the plant without equipment. Yes, Mr. Stelter.
And to speak to that, subscription costs, the first subscription cost is high. When they come in to replace the equipment, probably will see a major upcharge, not just 20 grand, it will be a lot more than that. Yeah, we can save 20 grand for a year. But a year down the line, when we have to get the 1 million gallon tank in process so that we can make sure that we can reline the 2 million gallon tank, because we need to supply the town, a third of the town that can supply fully with water in the spring while we take the 2 million gallon tank offline and we use the spring flow to run the rest of the town. That's the only way we can do this. What we did before, and without the 1 million gallon tank, it would become extremely difficult, if not impossible, to run just on what's in the pipelines.
Mr. Markle.
So I'm to understand from your response, that exclusion was not in these numbers for that software.
I'm sorry.
So the exclusion of the Browns Hill software subscription for the 1 million gallon tank is not excluded from our budget for next year. Because I saw it come through in an email. I don't know if it made the budget or not. Okay.
No, that is not excluded from.
So that's my question. And the follow-up question would be, it would answer whether or not it could be, is where are we in bringing the plant back online? What's the time frame for that? And what has to happen before we need that software?
Well, we are utilizing the software now. There's monitoring going on for water that could be coming into the plant. They're spilling it. But it is being used. Their information is being collected through that system. There's just no distribution into the community. So I just want to be clear on that. And they've made great strides in bringing it back online. I don't have what that timeline is for you at this moment, but we'll get that and bring that back to the board. A lot of the primary focus has been working on the PRVs and getting those projects done, as they were the PRVs was number 1, clock plant was number 2, but they're not only focusing on one, and you're doing a little bit of all of them at the same time. So we can get that update for you.
The one thing I'd like to suggest, and maybe this is not the case, but in line 60-50-20, no, I'm sorry, repairs and maintenance, 60-50-22. If we can get that 8-inch line replaced from the 2 million, I think that number will come down significantly. So there's one place with better infrastructure that will save quite a bit of money.
But that's 2024.
Right, it's not this budget year,
It's 2024.
but it's future, part of the 5-year plan.
Part 5 years.
Which, yeah, I have a motion for that.
Yes,
But see, that's what you guys need to do. You need to do your 5-year plan, your 10-year plan. And you've got to get it out for the public, so the public sees we're spending $100,000 or $1 million, whatever it is. And this is where that money's going. to make it feasible for them not to be mad. And it's gotta be, like I told Cindy, Cindy and I talked a lot. But it's gotta be in wording that the public can understand. That make.
I think well, I know what I'm hearing from. And that is, it's been 5 years since the February, or almost 5 years, water crisis. And
No, that's-
that
Was it 2017? It was
2018.
19.
Okay, sorry. Okay, 3 years. But at that time, there was a big push to get a plan, to get it started, because it was clear that's all the families. And how long did it take to even make baby steps? It was very hard, and we're still not there. In the meantime, it may not be a question of salaried staff that's costing, and we can't make it up because it's not user fees, but what's the hours, the amount of hours that the staff spends on superfluous projects and irrelevant stuff when they could be working full-time, 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week on getting the water done, getting the sewer done, et cetera, would pay off in the end. We could have been done with this in the last couple of years. We could have been far along with this whole project, but we're still here at zip. It happened yesterday. And really, there's still no end in sight. So I think it's not just the salaries, it's the hours that the staff is working on this, that, and the other, and not on the real work of the town, which is water, sewer, trash, parks, streets, sidewalks. That's it. No flags, no festivals, no of this other stuff that takes their time. No fence, permits, and all the other stuff that takes hours, days, weeks, months away from the important project.
Thank you. All right. Do we need to do anything else on water?
Yeah, yes. But,
I want to say thank you to the public for attending.
Christine?
Sorry, I have to see, like, the engineering services, like Scott Thomas, Colorado Rural Water Association. I haven't heard like anything about where we're at with him. It's an organization that is absolutely free. When Dave Whipper heard that, he was beyond excited. So are we utilizing them to the best of their ability, really? Because that would cut those engineering services down. I would love to see a comprehensive, like, inventory of everything there. I mean, in that sewer thing, aerators were cut, one was missing, that other thing was like stripped there. So what is comprehensive inventory of these systems, and how can we sell off things, get rid of that whole, I know it's been worked on, but like really, so the public knows this is what we have. When you sell off stuff, public doesn't really know. You can barely find that on the website. I mean, I think it almost should be offered to citizens who paid for it first. So those are just a few things. As far as employees go, I think you got a great staff right now at the water, sewer, public works, fantastic. It may be could reconfigure it, or I know I like it the way it is right now, but you know, you had a ORC put in an RFP. And it came back like 140,000 or something. And it seemed so high at the time, but there was 2 people in that RFP. And now we have 4 for the plan. So I'm not saying you should hire that person that submitted that application, but like there's ways to reconfigure the employees too, to bring that cost down. There's options. Thanks.
Thank you.
Do you want to say something?
I guess I would just like to not just drop the idea of a table. Do we still, if Cindy and I work on a table that shows the revenue provided by different rate levels based on the users, so people could see where the rate increases potentially coming from? And if we raise the base rate $2 instead of 3, what would we get? I just think, would that be helpful? Because I'm kind of looking at the public and I guess trustees.
Yes, Dave.
We've already started that table.
Oh, good.
We're already working on, because I need to use it compared to what, I did, so
Mhm.
that we
Figure
can
out.
find the error in that calculation. So we're already building those things.
Okay, good.
Dave?
There's a couple of things out there that can provide people with a lot of information. That's the audit report we get every year. It shows exactly what's being spent in the water. It doesn't necessarily show like what truck we bought or the equipment kind of things, but you can start questioning, well, geez, it seems like we're spending a lot of money here and there by looking at the audit, because that's showing the exact expenditures and that's been vetted. So each year we get those audits. That's something people should be using because it's a really good document. It's on.
I do want to let the board and the community know, because it did come up, that yes, the town is utilizing Colorado Rural Water Association, who provides a lot of great information, products to the town. And it's wonderful that they're free, but because they're free, they're in high demand. And so it's very slow getting information back. The reason you haven't had any updates is because we haven't received anything to update the town on from Colorado Rural Water to date.
All right. Anything else in the budget?
One last question. Does this budget encompass what it's going to cost to put the 1 million gallon tank online? Okay, thank you.
All right, anything, other questions on the budget, anything? Yeah.
Budget, anything?
Anything?
Okay. I was gonna follow up on CWA. I was wondering if it would be good for one of the water sewer trash KWC people to reach out to Mr. Thomas and might maybe get an update on where he's at.
Sewer survey?
No, not Thomas. We're just talking about.
You may want to check with Jeremiah and Jordan, because they've been communicating with him pretty extensively. I'm sure they would offer an update at the next meeting.
Hey, anything else on this? Yeah.
Jeremiah gave a pretty impressive presentation to the water commission. We've been asking him for that for a while. So his next meeting, the time when he's doing that PowerPoint, because that PowerPoint he does is really good about just helping people focus on where we need to go, what are the critical tasks, what needs to be done in the water system. So he's coming in and hoping that's one of the things he's doing.
He is planning to do that. At the meeting when that was discussed, it was discussed to do that as a special meeting, not at a regular board meeting. And he's looking at a schedule because they're also starting classes now.
Oh.
So they're starting to do, and this is exactly what we're talking about, when we start to overtask the staff, because they are now doing the classes that we've asked them to do to get their licensing we have 2 individuals that are working in the plant and an ORC. And we're looking to have 3. And the intent is eventually to have all of them licensed. Whether their primary focus and licensing are high-level licensing of water or wastewater, they won't all necessarily at once have the same licensing, of course, for both types.
Yes, Chris?
I have a separate question on that, on the getting these guys certified and getting their licenses. Are we having them sign contracts for 4 or 5 years?
When the town starts to have to expend funds directly, yes.
Okay,
Some of the initial classes they've decided to pay for on their own.
because if we're, that's something else we need.
We do that.
Anything else on the budget? Well, Thomas.
Okay, yeah, sure. Remember your question. So I have a question on the sewer reserve from the land sale. Forget the exact number, 500 and something, maybe. If I can find this page here, sorry.
36.
6. Sewer ending reserve. Categorized here. I think it must have been in the
Transfer.
yeah.
530.
There we go, $530,000, thanks, city. That reserve is to be used solely for capital projects, is that correct? Okay, and we have $100,000 capital project on the docket for next year, Doris, correct? Yeah, could we use that reserve to pay for that project?
Potentially, but then again, we also know that we have a multi-million-dollar project coming down. We're gonna be forced to do, and if we don't have any matching funds to get grants for that, we're gonna have to really increase rates to get that. So potentially, yes, but then you're kind of.
Refresh, it's 2027, is that correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. All right, 5 years. Come up with 1.5 million or so in today's dollars at today's prices. And it'll be more than that. It'll be more than that.
So with that, can somebody explain to me what we have to do with the sewer plant? I have never gotten a definitive answer. You know?
That's a great question.
Do you know?
What we have to do with the sewer plant, you have to go from, right now we have an open pond system, and you have to go to an enclosed system. So there, now, what that will mean for the town. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, CDPHE had no interest in doing anything that was of a natural or any type of organic process. That is shifting. It's just now starting to be recognized that, so we may be able to do a different, not a complete enclosed system where we're talking about having to build over ponds and, we may be able to move to a different, we talked about, different type of pond system where, it's enclosed, but we're not. It's a natural organic process instead of a chemical driven process. So I can't say exactly what it is we're going to have to do, but right now we have an open system and it has to go to a system that is a little bit more contained.
The other thing, my understanding is there are other chemicals that we're going to have to start removing sewer water.
Yes,
That can't be done in the current system that we have. And
That's
so we have to find a different way of remediating those chemicals.
that's correct.
And what that's called is tertiary treatment. And I'm a big promoter of the artificial marsh or man-made marsh for that. And that also can be used for our next big elephant in the room, the storm water. Because we're gonna have to treat stormwater, which means that we have to get the sediment out of it, and then we can run it through the same system. And we will basically bring out water that is drinking water quality accessible. You'd still have to chlorinate it as well. And the marsh, you still chlorinate and dechlorinate. So that you have no E. coli or salmonella or whatever going into the river. But it's a much better system for the ecosystem, and it's a lot cheaper for us to run. One of those big plants, we're talking another operator, a full-time operator, probably 3 at minimum, and probably 5. And we're talking millions. It's gonna blow us out of the water.
And I would add, Mayor, to that as well, that the marsh system and natural system that we're talking about is also the same system that was briefly touched upon when we were talking with Turner Ditch and Lone Cabin about what they're doing. Because the planting of the trees and the things that they're doing out there to remediate the piping of their ditch, the marsh fits with that. And as part of that suitability, those kind of changes that we're gonna have to make don't impact that project that we're working on with Turner Ditch.
A couple things I was gonna bring that up. Thanks, Frank. I think that as I recall, their project uses our effluent as part of their water source already. So presumably they would be keeping up with any changes that they have to make in their project. I was wondering if anybody knew a CRS, revised statute or House bill number for what we're talking about for these changes.
It's a federal change. It's not.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
FDA then?
Yeah.
Or FDA.
And we're already out of compliance with both nitrogen and phosphorus. And there's no way to remove those currently with our. We could ameliorate that by pumping the sludge out of the ponds and getting more capacity. That would help in the short run. But we also need to check, we'll have to run our sludge through, check for the forever chemicals. to keep that.
Compost, yeah,
And that's something that we need to look at right away
I
too.
was gonna think too, yeah. Yes,
The EPA, it's preliminary plan 15.
Thank you.
Looking for.
yes,
My only addition is that when we do have our 5-year plan discussion, which hopefully soon, that we try to get some very concise information about the sewer, because that's gonna come up in 5 years. And that's something we really need to have a better handle on. What exactly that's gonna be. And maybe whoever we hire as an engineer can help us with some of that. So just big things on the horizon. Yeah. Do you want to say something? Dave?
Well, two things. One, I want to make sure we're having signed contracts and really look at how long it takes us to get payback for people that have gotten certified. So what I'm concerned about is we have the same churning that we have with the police where someone comes in, they get certified and then boom, they're going to another jurisdiction. So to me, the payback has to be at least 3 years is what I'm thinking of, even 4 years. And if the money we've spent on them needs to be paid back by that employee for that time. And of course, it's here. If they leave within a year, they have to pay back practically all of it. You know, I think that's it. But just making sure that we're protecting the town from churning, especially in this area. It's hard to find.
I'd just like to say that, even though we don't have a written spreadsheet format for a 5-year plan, all of us that have been here, we know that we have to look and keep the future in mind, which is when we're setting, things are set up the way they are, that 530,000 was originally supposed to go to doing that circle of sewer line that was gonna go to Stop and Save, because we had a contract, or not a contract. I think it was engineer. No, I know it was engineer, but we have an agreement.
Yes.
That we're supposed to provide sewer to that area, and we can't currently provide that sewer, but yet we have an agreement to provide them sewer. So, not only, and that's 1.5 million, and then on top of it, we have that sewer plant coming. And we've done the initial work in collecting the data, which is what JDS Hydro did and what SGM did. So we are collecting the information. We haven't sat down and put it into a presentable format, but that doesn't mean that we're not constantly thinking or finding out what is going to be expected in the future and trying to provide the information so that it looks, the public knows that we're working in that direction.
okay, well, it's 6:13. Dave, did you have one more thing?
I finally remember, it was basically those engineering reports. If you look through the engineering bids that we have, RFPs, some of those engineering firms come with a grant writer. And some of those engineering firms come with CIP with capital improvement plans for it. So we get the agenda items work.
Absolutely, on my list. All right. I suggest that we go ahead and adjourn this meeting and then.
Before
Yeah.
get out of the budget, I was wondering where we are in the budget process. How many more meetings do we have? What are the next steps?
The budget has been presented And I will collect more data. We will have another meeting to provide that. And then we have, the next step is to provide or to have a public hearing, which is November, that first meeting, I believe.
First meeting in November.
And then it has to be, there'll be a special meeting set in December when we get the final numbers from the assessor's office. And then that will be when you need to approve.
So will the next board meeting have a special budget session in front of it?
Yes, yes, that's when the information that was given this evening as far as spreadsheet. Looking at the tiers and things, because it seems at this point, those are the things we need to start honing in on. Are the cost of services increases, adjustments. And that's really seems to be the primary area. It's again, the continuing with staffing discussion, not staffing necessarily, but salary discussion as far as the overall pool of money for salaries and cost of service.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and adjourn this meeting and we'll be back at 6:30. See y'all in 14 minutes.